Change this question, but I feel like I'm asking this. I'm asking this on behalf of a lot of people.
Okay.
Is a water game something that could ever take place? And with districts, is it possible? Is it more likely to take place since most communities have a swimming pool or something like that? It would be easier to have teams go to a swimming pool than versus setting up a huge event like this.
Okay.
Or like the regionals now.
I'm going to be perfectly upfront and honest with you. If you look at the logistics of trying to have a fully submerged water game in like swimming pools, probably isn't going to happen, but doesn't mean that we can't use water somehow. And just it depends on how diabolical and how creative the game design committee wants to be, because there's two things we always talk about every season. Number one is those of you that know Aiden Brown always shows up with some sort of a Nerf football and says, I got the game element for this year's game. So that's given. This upcoming year, Aiden's going to show up with a Nerf football and he's going to say, I got the game element for this year's game. Second thing is we're going to talk about water. So you never know. It is possible. I'm not saying more than that. Okay? Other questions?
What is your personal favorite game or game element and why?
Well, let's see. First of all, I have a limited sample size because I've only been here since 2006. Okay? There's a couple of them that I kind of like. I'll tell you what, I don't like inner tubes. The reason I don't like inner tubes is they're hard to get. Especially when you end up having to do triangles, circles, and squares. They don't inflate very well. A lot of times you have a lot of them left over afterwards, and it's not like you can end up selling a lot of triangular swimming tubes on the open market for anybody to do anything with. And the other thing is, if they puncture, we end up having to usually special order them because we want them extra thick with the walls, and the seams have to be extra robust because we know the impact and the abuse they end up taking on the competition floor. So I don't know if I really have a favorite, but I can tell you I have something that isn't really near and dear to my heart. Doesn't mean you won't see it again, but you never know. Okay? Other questions?
I'm wondering. I talk loud.
Yes, you do.
I'm wondering if the FIRST has looked at it's kind of an influx of pre-built systems that robots are using now. I noticed that there are a few teams that are running the same exact things as other teams that are the whole system, the whole chassis system is pre-manufactured, and kids just build from there up. I think that the use of that stuff it's another opportunity for kids to design and engineer. And I'm wondering if FIRST is doing anything to address how far we've gone towards 2 robot systems and having everything be manufactured by high-tech labs that have 8-axis milling machines and that sort of thing. I really think that if through game design or through rules or something, if we try to pull it back away from that and get kids using hammers and saws and stuff that is available to all the teams, that there might be some benefit to that. And I wondered if that's been talked about or if that's just kind of something that's been going on. I'm relatively new at this. I've only been here about 3 years, and I represent kind of the teams that don't make it here. I have a kid that's on a dean's list. That's why I'm here. And I know that at our regionals, I think the biggest regional in FIRST is the one at Washington that's a double. And that's something that a lot of teams talk about. And so I just kind of wanted to be their voice here.
And we also had double field in Dallas too, so yeah. Let's see. We already have some rules around some major end items like articulated arms and things like that as far as going out and buying them. And game design has a tendency to, right now we're trying to focus on simplifying the rules. As we end up discovering more and more of that type of activity happening, I'm sure we'll be investigating and ruling on those types of scenarios. As far as the difference between having CNC milling and having just hammers and hacksaws and things like that, we're about technology. We want to try to end up introducing as much technology to the students as we can. The other thing that's different about, especially FRC, is we don't mind having mentors sitting there working with the teams with a ratchet, with a screwdriver, with a power drill, working with them and showing them what's going on. Because what's the best way to really excite an engineer than to put a tool in their hand and let them help the teams and instruct the teams on what's happening? We're very different from some of the other programs in that way, and we're probably going to continue doing that. We still encourage the teams to build as much of this robot and to be as involved as they possibly can. But then again, this is FRC. So we know that some of our teams are extremely large. Some of our teams have 100, 125 members. And we know that a lot of the teams end up getting very, very specialized, having a business unit, having a logistics unit, having a marketing unit. And we want them to participate in the robot activities as much as we can. We know they probably don't lift up hammers and cut metal and things like that either, but it's still all about FIRST. I hope that answers your question. Okay.
I know that you probably haven't started on next year's game, but what is the future of co-opetition points?
We like them. Yes, we have already started on next year's game. And as a matter of fact, we had a complete game done, and game design looked at this game and said, wow, this is really a cool game. And we're now debating as to whether or not we want to relook at a clean sheet of paper and maybe go back and redo the 2013 game. Co-opetition points, as you know, this year were very instrumental, and we wanted to have teams use co-opetition. Co-opetition is part of the FIRST culture. It's part of the values that we're looking at. And as we continue to go forward, we're probably going to continue to make sure that teams try to cooperate. We understand that it's complex to work with just your alliance, especially when that alliance changes every match. We also realize it's extremely complex for your alliance to be working in cooperation and co-opetition with your opposing alliance across the way. That is a real true thing of beauty. That's what FIRST is about. And yes, you're going to see more co-opetition points, and hopefully we're going to make it challenging. But this year, if you did not end up cooperating in co-opetition, cooperating on the White Bridge, you probably weren't going to make it to the Big 8. Other questions?
Hi. What do you see as the future of the Kinect on, maybe even on the robot?
Well, if you notice this year, we did not disallow Kinect to be used on the robot, but we did not end up saying that we would support it. So bottom line is, don't throw your Kinects away. If you have an opportunity to use it in the off season, I would strongly encourage you to use it in the off season. And if you want to put it on your robot and see what it does, it has some very, very interesting capability if you want to look at it from that aspect. And that's all I'm going to say.
Hi, from a coach's point of view, there's very little guidance as to what the role of a coach should be on a team. I know this can be really controversial, but do you ever see FIRST placing guidelines or expectations that are more specific as to the role of a coach being involved in the education?
Let's see. Ever and never are very interesting terms, so I don't know if I will say ever or never. Having said that, when we end up visioning what teams are supposed to be, it's very open-ended. We do not want to overstructure teams. We want FRC to be very innovative. We want you to be dynamic. We want you to use the talents that you have. If you end up, having a team that looks very, very different than every other team and you're successful, that's a good thing. And I don't think FIRST is ever, of course, like I said, I try not to use the word ever, but we'll probably never dictate that you have to have one of these and one of these and one of these. Because once again, we're about innovation. We're about you figure out how to solve the problem. You tailor your team the best way you can. We have so many different situations out there. We have teams that have 100, 125 students. We have teams that have 5 or 6 students. We have some students on teams. Normally we don't even have a bottom line as far as the lower age limit, if you notice in the rules. Some of our marketing literature says 14, and the only reason it says that is for a kind of a guideline around FLL, FTC, and FRC. But we're going to try to keep that as open as we possibly can. As we continue to go forward, I'm sure we're looking at more and more educational opportunities and ways of trying to bring, especially FTC into the classroom and some of FRC possibly into the classroom. I hope that helps. What's that? Oh, okay. let's see. Yeah, I do need to put a plug in for Dean's List at 12 o'clock over in the ballroom there. Apparently, we're having the Dean's List presentation, so I strongly encourage you to join us over there for Dean's List. I want to thank you all for your questions. I hope that it was insightful, and I'll be around all day today and all day tomorrow. So if you have questions, certainly stop me, and I'll try to answer them to the best of my ability. So I hope you all have a great championship. Thank you.